This week on the Powell Not Found podcast, we talk about a little bit of F1's new streaming deal, some of the results of the American Austin Grand Prix, Carlos Sainz's controversial comments about the broadcasting style, which is honestly probably going to lead off the show. And we talk about the Yankees postmortem. Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman addressed the media finally about the results of their 2025 season. Coming up on the show, here we go.
I'm gonna tell you a story about a girl who loves gin. A national pandemic seized her birthday celebration. Although she knew it was coming, we tried not to tell her. She brewed some Irish breakfast. Did you know her birthday was getting coronaed? It was like Noah's home.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Powell Not Found podcast, episode 75 for the week of October 19th, 2025. I am your host, Mark Powell. Just want to remind everybody, in order to grow the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit that bell for notifications just in case you want right when it drops. We've been a little bit sporadic lately over the last couple weeks just because, life gets in the way. And I think that's one of the biggest realizations, I think, doing this podcast for 75 weeks as it was, or just over a year and 3 quarters, is that it's really hard to keep doing something like this, even if it's on a week-to-week basis. There are parts of me that are very impressed by anybody who can do this on a daily basis, right? There's so much time that goes into what you're going to talk about, or just thinking about what you're going to talk about, making sure that you talk about it in an articulate way. So people are doing this day to day. I mean, it's just I can't really put into my I can't visualize that happening because it's hard enough to do this weekly. Another realization I had for doing this for 75 weeks straight is things break. And I should know that. Being in video and my profession being video is that things break all the time. And so that's what happens when you have an 8:22 p.m. broadcast here or recording, is because usually things, wires fail, HDMIs go down, things are plugged in. I mean, the sheer amount of cables that I have plugged into the back of my Mac in order to make this show kind of function has really got me thinking, because if one cord goes down, it seems like everything goes down. It's just this cascading tragedy that plays out in slow motion. That being said, I'm very proud of the show getting to 75, getting to a landmark like that, because when I first started, there was trepidation and there was fear about talking about the things I wanted to talk about and whether I could do it. And so if it's, life gets in the way, sometimes it's not as frequent as it used to be, but 75 to me is still an accomplishment. So I just want to take a couple seconds at the top of the show to say, hey, that's kind of cool. 75 episodes straight. You can see them all on Apple Podcasts, or you can find them on Spotify. You can find them pretty much anywhere. But most importantly, go to the YouTube channel and subscribe. You can see the shorts there that are very, very popular, and popular according to my metric, which is more than 2 views, I should say. And go subscribe and make the show better and bigger. So let's get into it. I just finished watching. I wanted to talk a little bit about F1 at the top of the show. And I know the internet's going to get angry because I'm not an expert by any stretch of the means. I think it's impressive how much about that sport that I've watched for the last 5 years, that I've watched races, I've watched qualifying, I've watched sprint qualifyings, I've watched the sprint races, I've watched the actual races. And it's amazing that each time afterwards I come out with feeling like I have less knowledge as each race goes on, going, I don't even know what these, why are they switching tires? What is happening? And I want to learn more about it, and I'm not taking it that seriously. I'm not going to go to the library each night and research about F1, but It is interesting, and it's starting to feel more competitive here. Over the last 5 years, if you haven't been tuned into the F1 circuit, Max Verstappen, since about 2020, since he took that title from Lewis Hamilton's grasp at the last second in Abu Dhabi, has been pretty much dominant through the sport for the last 4 years, including 2020, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, where he won almost every single race. It wasn't even competitive. I think it was 2023. I think 2024, I think McLaren started getting into the mix here. But now it's starting to get kind of interesting as we just wound down the Austin Grand Prix today. And Max Verstappen is making it a little bit interesting. He's now 40 points behind the leader for the Drivers' Championship in Oscar Piastri. And Lando Norris is 14 points behind. And this is really the first time in 5 years that there's been any real challenging threat to Max Verstappen's dominance. And Oscar Piastri and McLaren and Lando Norris, it seemed like it was going to be a two-dog fight going into the end of the year. And Max Verstappen is coming back from 100. It looks like he's setting up a narrative that he's going to come back from an 104-point deficit, which has never been done before in F1, to potentially take the lead here in the last 5 races. Now there's 5 races to go, right? Anything can happen, an engine can fail, and all of a sudden it swings each way. But I think this is one of the closest drivers' championships they've had in a long time, because the dominance from Red Bull has been so present that no one really made it interesting. And F1 right now is giving even casual fans like myself a reason to tune in to some of these other races. Now we have Sao Paulo, I think we have Brazil coming up next. We have Vegas, which is a year ago I posted a short about Vegas being in the middle of the night. It was where Max Verstappen was drivers' champion last year. And I didn't understand why they put it in 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. or midnight, whenever that race started. And a lot of people on the internet reminded me that Las Vegas is in a desert, right? So say what you want about the heat of Singapore, but if they put that Vegas heat in the at 1 p.m, even if it is in October, it might be a little bit toasty in that cockpit. So I refrain from talking about the timing of the Vegas Grand Prix. I think I've had enough feedback on the internet from that for a lifetime. But going into the last 5 races, it's more competitive. It's a closer race than it's ever been, and it's giving people a reason to watch the last races with any kind of, because there's multiple dogs in this fight, right? This can go either way. Oscar Piastri looks slow in the last. He looks like he's lost the pace. The commentary has said as much during the entire race, that his pace and concentration seems to be off, right? Lando Norris ended up getting on the podium today to kind of shave a little bit off of that lead, and now it's really anyone's game going into these last 5 races. Now, if there's a wipeout or if there's an engine failure or whatever, this is going to be really exciting. But there's 3 people to watch in this race, because the Constructors' Championship has been put away by McLaren a couple races ago, and it gives people a reason to watch. Now, coincidentally, because of this is getting more interesting, F1 did release that Apple TV has basically signed a new deal to broadcast, to take the broadcasting rights from ESPN, which is where F1's been broadcast for, since I've gotten into it in like 2019. It's been on ESPN. Looks like that's going next year to Apple TV. This is an article from The Athletic. What will F1 on Apple TV look like? Everything we know and lingering questions, by Madeline Coleman. And they said Apple and F1 announced their 5-year partnership on the Friday of the U.S. Grand Prix weekend, a deal that will begin from 2026 and include amplifying the International Motorsport Series across multiple Apple platforms, including Apple Maps, which This has got to be an integration of like, hey, we can change our car or something like that to one of the driver's cars or something like that. Like, why wouldn't you want to navigate around your city as Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton? That's got to be the integration there with Apple Maps. Apple Fitness Plus, I'm a little bit unclear of how there's going to be an integration between F1 and Apple Fitness Plus, but potentially maybe there's more of a fitness plan that kind of echoes what F1 drivers go through. If you've watched Drive to Survive, you've seen a lot of drivers use that neck kind of strengthening exercise. Is that what the integration is going to be for Apple Fitness Plus? I don't know. I'm very curious to see what this is going to be. It came after the worldwide success of the F1 movie, which starred Brad Pitt, and which has grossed nearly $630 million globally to date, according to F1. So, and then there's some quotes here. Thanks to Apple, we're going to be ready to get into more houses and more in the culture of American fans, said F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali to select members, including The Athletic. Exciting news. I mean, Apple TV has really come fast and made themselves like kind of a broadcast juggernaut after kind of taking over the soccer world, broadcasting MLS games. They are a formidable force for MLB games. I mean, for a long time, the MLB was broadcast one way from like 1998 to about 2020. They had a score bug, and maybe the score bug would be updated. Maybe there was some integration, but Apple TV has kind of brought in probabilities and all that kind of stuff. They kind of took what StatCast was doing and kind of doubled down on it. Their broadcasters, maybe not the most knowledgeable. There's been plenty of jokes about whether they really know the sport of baseball because of some of the comments that they make during the broadcast. Maybe not their strength, but in terms of their production value, that was very, very noticeable from the get-go. A lot of shallow depth of field shots, a lot of beautiful, beautiful camera work that wasn't really present in a lot of baseball broadcasts, especially from the regional sports networks, that is. So I'm excited to see what they can do there, because the existing broadcast of F1 is through Sky Sports, and their F1 app, which is what I view F1 through, because I don't have cable. I think, like a lot of Americans, have cut the cord on that venture to only pay for 18 subscriptions. I watch it through the F1 app, and the F1 app, I think, of all sports, is one of the more flexible apps when it comes to watching the game, or watching the race, I should say, the way that you want to watch it. I mean, they give you access to cockpit views. They give you access to track the driver that you want to track, right? You can watch different types of commentary. You can put on different types of commentary. You can watch the ESPN broadcast. I'm kind of making this up as I go along here, but like, you can watch the ESPN broadcast, or you can watch the Sky Sports broadcast. You can kind of like pick and choose. Flexibility like that used to be available in the MLB app, where you could turn off broadcasters, you could turn on different feeds, and they've kind of stripped away in time that kind of flexibility. But the camera cockpit views and tracking and stuff like that, if you have the full, whatever, $12.99 it is, you can do that. You can have a lot of multiple different feeds and view it. So it's very, very flexible. The problem with this is that apparently, because of this deal, and I got to scroll down to the bottom of the article to find, what does this mean for F1 TV? After thanking ESPN for its investments over the last several years, Domenicali added that F1 TV, quote, F1 TV has been instrumental for our growth. So what does that mean for the Apple deal? What does the Apple deal mean for its future? Holmes said F1 TV will continue to be available in the U.S., though the subscription aspect will be merged into Apple's ecosystem. This means Apple TV subscribers will be able to access the F1 TV as part of their Apple TV subscription, he said. So in my mind, I immediately read this and went, okay, be prepared to pay more, because Apple TV has already gone up from $12.99 from $9.99 to $12.99. So if you're accessing it as part of your Apple TV, I'm assuming it's probably going to go up to a 21, another $9.99. Right now, you can get F1 TV for $9.99. So does this mean that in order to watch F1, we're going to have to be paying a barrier of $24 a month? And let me remind everybody, this is not like a MLB.TV situation where you're paying yearly for 6 months of baseball, for out-of-market baseball. The F1 calendar, basically starts in February and goes all the way to December, beginning of December. There's not much time off in the year. If you really want to know when the F1 season starts, watch for the drop of F1 Drive to Survive on Netflix. That's usually the first week of the season. So that's a little bit unfortunate, because I love that F1 app. I think it's kind of an easy way to get in and out without having to kind of airplay it from ESPN or from anybody else's app or whatever. And to have that merged into Apple's ecosystem, it's like you're putting another gate in front of people who want to watch this. What's not surprising about this, and what it kind of also is surprising about this, is that they signed with Apple, right? They said at the top of the article that Apple was, had partnered with Lewis Hamilton and produced the F1 movie, which was a critical success, right? $630 million at the box office is nothing to sneeze at. What is surprising is that Netflix didn't hop and get this, and didn't go out of their way to try to capture this endeavor. Netflix is broadcasting opening day of MLB next year, which is a seismic change in MLB. To have opening day not on a regional sports network, to not have it on ESPN, to not have it on Fox or what have you. But it's behind a streaming giant. And with the success, and with Netflix being a major reason that F1 reached the American market, it seems weird that they wouldn't partner Drive to Survive with the broadcast of F1 for the next 5 years together. That seems like a match made in heaven. Now, granted, the F1 movie, is also a match made in heaven, but Netflix is the streaming service that brought F1 to the table, and then they just handed them off. It's like they brought F1 to the prom, and then they handed it off to a different date. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me why this happened, unless there was some sort of bidding war for this that Netflix just wasn't willing to go in that decision. I'm very curious to read more about it, because that was one of the first things that struck me, and that was being discussed, was that weird that it's not on Netflix, right? So very odd to me. So here's how to watch F1 in the U.S. starting. You'll need a regular Apple TV subscription, which currently costs $12.99 or $99 annually. There won't be a separate package, just a single subscription. In addition to English, Q says the races will also be broadcast in Spanish and featured closed captioning. Interesting about the... Interesting. It's just very interesting. Sky Sports right now broadcasts the races, and it kind of remains to be seen right now if Sky Sports is going to continue to broadcast these races the way that they do, or if Apple's just kind of coming with a production element, and that's what the article kind of comes and goes to and continues to say. I hope that they don't change it too much. I kind of like the way that they broadcast these races. I love the way that they commentate over the race. There are long swaths of time when you're watching a motor race that not much happens, right? Like there's few overtakes, outside of the sprint race this weekend where, Hülkenberg tapped Piastri, who tapped Norris, and there was confusion at the first turn and just wipeouts and crazy crashes. And, there can be the opposite side of that coin, right? Where nothing happens. The way that they commentate over these races is very, very entertaining. And I hope that Apple TV recognizes that some of the best part is listening to the back and forth and listening to the constant commenting on what's happening or what's not happening, or the hypothetical things that could happen, would happen, should happen, the back and forth between the F1 stewards, like all that stuff about who's having a good race, who's having a bad race, is what makes watching entertaining. It actually makes you look at other sports like baseball and realize how much dead air some of the regional sports networks have when they're commentating over the sport. Granted, there's not a lot happening, in baseball the way that the action is consistently happening in F1, but it makes you think. Talking about that broadcast, I just want to comment on one last thing before we move on to our last second topic, is the Carlos Sainz quotes from Singapore last week or 2 weeks ago, and he has said and come out even this weekend and clarified that the comments were kind of blown out of proportion, but he did talk about the broadcast and how Sky Sports was broadcasting some of the events and some of the races, and I couldn't help but agree with him. I didn't get to comment on this last week or 2 weeks ago when it happened, but Carlos Sainz says it's become a bit of a trend, which must have worked for them once upon a time when people found it interesting to see our girlfriends, to see famous people on TV, the reactions. I understand that if there is an overtake, a very tense moment in the race, it is understandable that the production team might want to show a reaction shot if they have seen that it worked in the past. But they only should if the competition is respected and you're always showing the important moments of the race. Last weekend, they didn't show any of the 4 of 5 overtakes they did at the end, nor did they show Fernando's pursuit of Lewis. They missed a lot of things. The other thing is fine, but don't lose sight of the main thing. For me, they go overboard a little, showing the celebrities and girlfriends. Yeah, I agree, Carlos. That's one thing that Sky Sports clearly responded to over the last 2 weeks, because it became a little bit of a joke or a meme when I was watching it, going, how many times are they going to shoot to Rebecca Ferguson? The fact that I even know Carlos Sainz's girlfriend's name is because of how many times they shoot to her, right? How many times they show Lando's partner, how many times they show the families, how many times they've shown Tom Cruise looking at with the pit wall with Toto or Christian or wherever. Anya Taylor-Joy has been shown 1,000 times whenever she's with Ferrari. Amelia Clark has been shown. It has been a little bit overboard with seeing the people that don't matter, right? Like it reminds me of when Justin Verlander started dating Kate Upton. And Justin Verlander could go to any team, and they would pan and shoot Kate Upton in the crowd, and they would show her, and it kind of became a little bit of a meme, a joke. It is the Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift thing for the Chiefs game, right? How quickly did that get exhausted? Seeing that over and over again. Paul Skeens showing Livy Dunn. It happens with high profile partnerships all the time, but it takes away, especially in football, and I think you can make a case with the Taylor Swift stuff. It is a little bit overboard. Every single time there's a touchdown or success on the field, they look for a reaction shot. It takes away from the game. One time it's fine, but it does take away. I counterpoint to Carlos's thing. I think F1 does a really good job with making some of the lesser important overtakes and showcasing those battles way more than maybe any other sport would, only because F1's like one of the only sports where you're not tracking the winner the entire time. Max Verstappen can build up a 15-second lead, and guess what? You won't see him for the rest of the broadcast. You will be looking at the battle for second, the battle for third. Even when I first started watching F1, it was very, very intriguing to me that like anyone cared about the battle for 7th or 8th place. Then finding out about the point systems, finding out about the reward that you get just if you're in second or third, it will affect your future seasons. The sport has given stakes to make you interested in middle of the pack battles that maybe other sports haven't, right? Like, you're not going to see that kind of like fight for 4th place or whatever in MLB, 4 months into the season. If the Orioles are out of it, the Orioles are out of it. There's no motivation for them to keep playing if they've already been eliminated, other than to try to find talent and try to rebuild a team that is competitive. But there is stakes for teams that are a little bit lower in the championship to kind of get to vie for 3rd place, to vie for 4th place. So that's what kind of makes that sport interesting, because it's not all, it is about the winner, it is about the championship, but it is important to place strong and not be at the bottom. And so that's why I think in terms of broadcasting, they do a good job of showing those things, but they did kind of tilt a little bit to the left of center here. And they might have had to course correct, because he was right. You were seeing it as a viewer a little bit too much, and they have corrected. I don't think I saw anyone's partner. In fact, no one's family was showcased, I think, in the last couple races. They're like, Carlos, we're just going to focus on the driving. We heard you loud and clear. So that was just kind of funny, because it was something that I was kind of thinking about that kind of came up. So let me take a quick break. I did a little bit about F1 there that I was not expecting, and we'll talk a little bit about the Yankees postmortem. I've been waiting on this to talk about this for a while. So, let's take a quick break, and I'll be right back. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to episode 75 of the Powell Not Found podcast. Again, just reminding everybody to subscribe to the show, find us on anywhere you find podcasts, and go ahead and find us on the social channels, TikTok, Instagram, anywhere that you can find our shorts, and go comment and like and do whatever you want on the social platforms. Just make sure that you follow us and tell us which content you like. So, man, boy, was my preamble very accurate this episode, because right when I took a break, everything broke again. So it's been a tough 75 episodes, but it's been a tough episode 75, I should say. But man, am I going to change this setup come next week to make this a little bit more sustainable? I think it's the word I'm looking for. It's a little bit fragile is, I think, the word I'm looking for. So let's get into it. Let's finish up this last little section. And I was saying before everything exploded was that I think it's tough being a Yankees fan in the midst of what's happening right now. The Yankees got bounced from the ALDS weeks ago. I didn't really comment on it or talk about it. I think it's hard every single time your team gets bounced from the playoffs. I think you start kind of rolling back to all of the things that you kind of saw during the season and going, well, I think we saw this coming. They weren't a very, very good team. They were up against the Blue Jays team that dominated them throughout the season. I think they went 10-5 or something like that. The Blue Jays won crazy amounts of games against, or they 8-5 or something like that. So they won the season series against the Yankees. The Yankees were swept in Toronto during the season, and the Yankees managed to scrape one game on the backs of an Aaron Judge home run. If it wasn't for that, they probably would have been swept. But they looked like they got beat by the better team. And boy, when the Yankees lose, there's a swath of people around the country that celebrate because they remember a Yankees domination period of the 90s that, the Yankees won 4 out of 5 years, and that's great, but that was, a quarter century ago. And they remember a Yankees team that was helmed by George Steinbrenner in a time where the Yankees were outspending everybody. I think now we're seeing almost the same thing here with the Dodgers having claimed 5 out of the last 10 NL pennants, and they've won 2 World Series. They look like they're going to steamroll onto a 3rd World Series in less than 5 years, depending on who wins here, Seattle or Toronto, which I should check the actual score of as they are playing in Toronto tonight. And Toronto is leading 2-0 here in the top of the 3rd as of this recording. So if that goes to Game 7 in Toronto, it could be anybody's game. But that's turning into the more interesting series. But man, do both of those teams look outmatched by a Dodgers team that seems to turn it on in the postseason. But anyway, getting back to the point. The point is that the Yankees have found themselves in a situation where this is the 16th year that basically they've come up empty because they have a World Series or bust mentality. And as Yankee fans, I feel like we have gotten used to seeing this post-mortem talk to the press media day far too often. So if you don't know, Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman, and sometimes Hal Steinbrenner, depending on the severity of how bad the season was, will address the season after they get bounced. This is pretty common throughout all of Major League Baseball. And we've learned 3 things. One, that Carlos Rodon has had surgery to remove a bone spur, so he will not be ready for opening day, which is a little bit deflating because if you think about how injury-plagued this season was, one of the things to look forward to next season was that you were getting Cole back. You had a rotation that looked like at some point will be Cole, Rodon, Fried, Schmidt's not coming back, but now Schlittler. And that's pretty dominant force if everyone's healthy. Well, it turns out the season hasn't even started, and we already know that that will not be happening, right? So he got some junk bone spur removed from his elbow, so he will be out for opening day. It looks like he will start a rehab therapy, but he will not be ready for that opening month of the season. So that's already a blow to the pitching staff, which was already considered the biggest strength of the Yankees. Cole will obviously not be ready for opening day. I think he's ready. The positive of this thing is that it seems like Cole might be ready sooner rather than later. I mean, I think a lot of people were projecting June, but that doesn't seem to be the case. I mean, he was already having throwing and flat ground throwing. They were showing that kind of during the postseason run. So hopefully he'll be sooner rather than later, but it looks like he's recovering well and he's on track. Third thing that we learned was that Anthony Volpe has undergone surgery to repair a labrum that he injured May 6th while diving for a ball on his non-throwing left shoulder. Now, Volpe had a real bad season. I mean, a underperforming season, on track with his career numbers. And I think it's not the first year he's heard the ire of Yankee fans, but I think it's becoming a trend at this point that his performance is not really up to snuff. And you could tell in the postseason that his bat-to-ball skills at this point was not a strength. The Yankees were severely lacking Toronto's strength. And say it with me, people. You've watched that series too. Toronto's strength was putting the ball in play. And that's something that Anthony Volpe, 11 for 15 with or 11 strikeouts out of 15 at bats, not something that looked like he was he looked like he was suffering, which kind of caused a lot of people to wonder, was he playing injured? Is this another case of the Yankees not being straightforward with the fans or being honest with themselves about a player that maybe is not playing 100%. Reporters asked Brian Cashman about this directly about Anthony Volpe playing injured, and this is what he had to say. Let me get this up and queued up.
Gary, Chris.
Throughout the season, Anthony and Aaron said that Volpe's shoulder injury didn't have much of an impact on his performance. Do you agree with that assessment? And
did you? Anthony said, and I'm sorry, it was two guys. Meaning
Anthony and Aaron Boone.
Okay.
Both said that Volpe's injury didn't impact his performance much. Do you agree with that assessment? And if so, what makes you think he can be a positive contributor post-surgery?
I personally think now I'll start leaning more into that. Yes, it was affecting him because ultimately he had to have a surgery. None of that was really on the table, in season. So I think all things can be true. Was it bothering him to a level that was getting to a height of concern for us? In season, the answer is no. Why is that? Player says it wasn't bothering him at that point. His physical testing was coming back strong. We did an MRI that showed some old stuff in there. Ahmad recommended we can do a shot. You banged it. Falling on it, diving on it. That seemed to take care of it. You forget about it. Struggles keep happening. Conversations between your player and your trainer. These players, first and foremost, are super powers. They're superpower. They're superhuman beings. Where the things that bother us physically, in a massive way, I don't think these alpha dogs, for instance, it bothers them as much. They don't feel things as much. Maybe it's adrenaline. Maybe it's just they're so strong as oxes in so many different ways that it doesn't, present itself to the point where they got to complain in a loud way. And so I know when follow-up asks, including from my chair, is this a problem? I'll deal with our head trainer, and his staff and the player. No, I actually feel better than I've ever felt the entire season. All right. And this is during performance lapses.
So these players, these alpha dogs, are superhuman. Man, if Superman was injured as much as the Yankees are, these superhuman players, he wouldn't be saving anybody. He'd be in Roosevelt Hospital every single day. I understand wanting to defend your players and your roster. That's totally understandable. But superhuman? The amount of toe turf injuries that I have heard over the last 10 years of some of these players, hamstrings, obliques, right? I understand people play through injuries, right? There's a whole documentary, Derek Jeter's documentary, talked about him playing through essentially a broken ankle until it blew out. Yes, that's superhuman. These guys get more days off than any other baseball players ever. They throw less pitches than players historically. So forgive me if I don't exactly agree with the superhuman, superpowered analogy here being made about these players. Kind of stepped around the question about whether Volpe playing hurt. Obviously, they're saying, yeah, now it was affecting him because now we know. Then my question is that these guys seem to get MRIs every 5 seconds. How is this not? Why is this why are you waiting until the end of the season to find out that he actually does need surgery, right? Why do these professional opinions come so late? They made the same kind of postseason assessment on Judge's throwing arm, saying he's not going to need surgery. That's the other last thing that we kind of learned from this postseason presser. And my question is well, you could clearly see him taking wild swings, not producing, and you had a shortstop on the bench that you traded for in Jose Caballero, still not being played because they're still sticking with Volpe. Now they go on in this press conference to say that they're still sticking with their man. They both Boone and Cashman kind of did seem to say that they're going to stick with Volpe as the starting shortstop once he comes back. They're looking for him to recover, but he's coming back from surgery, right? He's going to be hindered by this injury. This is this is a shoulder surgery. people bounce back from surgeries very, very differently. Sometimes people come back and they're the same person. Sometimes they come back and they really need to find themselves again. So this is something that we should look out for next season, because to be honest, the biggest problem of the Yankees is that their inability to hit and the bottom of the order, which includes Anthony Volpe. Wells, Volpe, and McMahon. That's the bottom of the order for the Yankees next season. And if the playoffs and the postseason is any indication of just how well they're going to do next season, well, you're essentially telling the Yankees fans that you're starting each game with 9 outs. That you're playing an 18-out game while everyone is playing a 27-out game. Because the swings and the at-bats, they were not competitive. Anthony Volpe has been a 200 Mendoza line hitter for 3 straight years. My question is, how long of a sample size, how big of a sample size do these guys need? They keep on saying that Anthony Volpe is 24 years old and he has the potential to grow into something great. Some people don't bloom late. I believe the comparison was Crow Armstrong or Dansby Swanson, who was on the Cubs rather. How long? How long do we have to wait for someone to bloom? Now, some additional fallout that's actually a little bit lighter is that after the Yankees were bounced out of the playoffs, Fox, obviously with Kevin Burkhardt and A-Rod and David Ortiz and Derek Jeter, they were analyzing the roster construction and of the Yankees and Alex Rodriguez. I don't know if I can get it out here. If Alex Rodriguez, A-Rod on Yankees roster, Fox. Let's see if I can find the video. Worst construction of a roster. Here we go. So this is A-Rod's. Let me see if I can get to A-Rod's comments on the roster that really seemed to bother Brian Cashman here. Let's see if I can get it. Let me see if I can push this up. Let me cue it up.
Expected to at least get back to the World Series, if not win it, and that is not what they were looking for.
Yeah, and look, again, Aaron's been very classy. We've all been very consistent with that. Honestly, from the entire organization, he's the one guy with Circle that has least to blame. I mean, he's got a lot of talent, but for me personally, one of the worst construction of a roster I've ever seen. You have 3 left-handed catchers, you have 5 DHs, you have a first baseman in and out. It's just a very, very difficult hand for Boone, and honestly, they were exposed against a much better Jays team.
Yeah, I mean, look, Aaron said it. They got beat. They got beat. You know, last year you can sit back and talk about the World Series in Game 5, and you can say Yankees beat themselves in that particular game. In this series, the Toronto Blue Jays proved that they were a better team. Right? From top to bottom, they were a better team. What's tough is for the Yankee fans, right? This is the second year in a row that they've watched another team celebrate on their home field. And you can feel the frustration. But look, those press conferences that Aaron just did, we've all been in them. They're very, very difficult because we've been a part of teams where we thought we're going to win a World Series, thought we were the best team, and it didn't happen, right? So I think sometimes you got to sit down and let it all digest for a minute. And I think it's probably a longer conversation to what you had brought up, Al. But Aaron did a good job. I mean, look, he's working with what he has to work with, and he sticks up for his players. I know he takes a lot of heat. But, look, I'm not saying it from any inside knowledge, but I'm pretty sure Aaron's not the one that's calling every move that they make throughout the game.
And there is the quote that basically seemed to get under the feathers of Brian Cashman. Brian Cashman went on the fan and kind of responded to saying, I don't know why DJ said what he did. Derek Jeter said what he did, but, that's not the case. And kind of harpooned Alex Rodriguez's comments by saying, hey, man, you picked the Yankees to win the World Series 48 hours before, and now you're telling me it's the worst constructed roster. It's not necessarily a bad point. I will say that what Derek Jeter said and kind of alluded to, I didn't think it was as big of a deal as people were saying, or Brian Cashman was saying, because there have been moments within the Yankee games that have seemed like they're scripted. I mean, they talk about their bullpen usage all the time, about their pitching, formula that's going to lead them to a win before one pitch is thrown. Right? They know people that are going to be out of the bullpen because it's been prescribed, right? I think that's what Derek Jeter was kind of alluding to, not necessarily that the lineups are being kind of called down Moneyball style from Billy Beane to his manager at the time. If you've ever watched the Moneyball movie, right, that's kind of like what they're alluding to, saying like they have no control. But I think that they're making assumptions, right, about who's good at what based on the data that they're seeing. I don't think that that's that controversial of an opinion. Whether Boone makes the lineup or not, and he makes his decision there, is not necessarily he's making a decision that's uninformed. He's making a decision based on the data that's being delivered to him, which is what I think Derek Jeter is trying to say there. Alex Rodriguez went a little bit more hardcore by basically saying it's the worst constructed roster. 3 left-handed catchers. What did he say? Let me see if I can get this up again here. It's a pretty bad lampooning of the roster here. There it is.
One of the worst construction of a roster I've ever seen. You have 3 left-handed catchers. You have 5 DHs. You have a first baseman in and out. It's just a very, very difficult hand for Boone. And honestly, they were exposed against very, very difficult hand for Boone. They were exposed against a much better Jays team.
5 DHs, man. It's not untrue, right? You've got Aaron Judge, who couldn't throw for half of the season. You got Giancarlo Stanton, who is a DH. Paul Goldschmidt was a bench player. I mean, he played first base and stuff like that. Jason Dominguez was in a minimized role in the playoffs because he couldn't play left field. Trent Grisham was a below-average center fielder. You did have 3 left-handed catchers in J.C. Escara, Ben Rice, and Austin Wells. So, yeah, I mean, it was on paper, I think that the lineup made sense. In 5 DHs, he might have been referring to DJ LeMahieu, too, who kind of like lost the ability to field. I mean, the athleticism of the team has certainly gone down. So he makes a lot of points. Just the way he said it, I think, kind of was a little bit extreme. But you know what? The Yankees lost, right? So there is validity to what he's saying. The roster was not strong enough, right? The Yankees said a couple years ago, I think it was in 2021 maybe, that the rest of the league had caught up to them. The rest of the league has surpassed them, right? The playoffs are not a crapshoot, right? Like, look at the Dodgers, what they're doing. They're going out and they're spending money and they're bringing players into the fold. They're making the Dodgers feel like a team where if you want to win, you sign with the Dodgers. They're making international signings all the time. They're making it hard for international signings to say yes to another team. They're even thinking about making a draft because so many of them want to go to the Dodgers. They're picking up players when they need to pick up players like a Freddie Freeman and making people play the position that they're meant to play. Not this kind of round robin stuff that the Yankees were doing all year with Jazz and DJ. They're picking up veteran players like Teoscar Hernandez, right? Tommy Edman, who was a great pickup from the Cardinals. Max Muncy, these great players. And the Yankees are making bets on players like Josh Donaldson or Joey Gallo. They're picking and choosing and acting like they're a small market team when they definitely have the means to go out and be a bulldog with the Dodgers. And frankly, when you had a lineup that was really struggling at the end of the season or the middle of the season, and you have a lot of players that you can go around the diamond and say that they need to either adjust their approach and stop swinging for the fences and make contact and stop making this such a Aaron Judge reliant team, they didn't do that much, right? They brought in Ryan McMahon to play third base, and he played a beautiful third base. His bat was non-existent. Anthony Volpe was Anthony Volpe throughout the year. No highs, no big highs this year. No, mostly just a big low this entire year. Jazz kept swinging for the fences, hit 30-30, but Jazz needs to make more contact and stop trying to shoot for that short porch. First base was a constant carousel between Ben Rice and Paul Goldschmidt. Paul Goldschmidt was brought in to play first base, ended up only playing when he saw lefties. Catching, Austin Wells was behind the plate because he could throw out runners barely. His bat, non-existent. Trent Grisham was a surprise, but he struck out, swung at pitches, looked at so many pitches down the zone. Struck out in key moments when wins were teetering in the balance and wasn't there when he needed to be clutch. I go back to a Baltimore game that I attended when he was the tying run and just swung through a ball right down the middle. Cody Bellinger was a great pickup. Changed his approach all the time. Aaron Judge is Aaron Judge. Jason Dominguez was not taught the field. Took crazy of routes to balls. Balls were lost in the outfield that could have been caught if there was more focus on defense. JC Escara, good for you. You went from Uber to the Yankees. That's a great story. Hopefully you get more playing time in the future. And the pitching staff was decimated by injury with Garrett Cole and Clark Schmidt going down. Heel did not look the same. Carlos Rodon was off and on all season. Max Fried entered a summer swoon. This season, like A-Rod said, a lot of talent. But unfortunately, nothing's going to change unless the Yankees decide to change their approach and start looking at teams like the Toronto Blue Jays, who, by the way, right now are still playing baseball. They're not sitting on the couch. And they get more bats that are supposed to act like contact bats. Right now, the Toronto leads 4-0. This looks like it's heading towards a Game 7 here in the top of the fourth. Yankees need to find those contact bats to accent the power. They cannot be constantly reliant on the home run. They need to make things happen in between the lines. And I'll wrap up with this because I know the podcast is getting long. But years ago, when baseball was all or nothing, it was hit over the defense. It was understandable because people were shifting left and right, right? Look at one David Ortiz at bat and tell me how you're going to get a ball straight through on the ground. You have to hit it over the defense. Major League Baseball adapted a couple years ago by saying, hey, we're not going to allow you to have the mega overshift anymore. You have to be on each side of the bag, which allows what to happen? Well, there's more of a chance that things can happen when you hit the ball on the ground and hit it in holes. Teams are still giving up large swaths of acreage on the side of the diamond to just bunt down the baseline. And I know no one's going to do that. But if the Toronto Blue Jays proved anything to the Yankees, is that if you put the ball in play, you force the other team to play the sport. And the Yankees need to start forcing other teams to play baseball, to execute on plays. Because anything can happen if you swing the friggin' bat. And with that, we will end the show. Anyways, as the show goes on, we're going to do more movie reviews as we always kind of do as the baseball season winds to a close. We'll start talking about the World Series. Dodgers versus Seattle, Dodgers versus Toronto. Who do you think is going to be the final seed here in the 2025 World Series? Go ahead and comment on the episode when it kind of comes out. So with that, thank you for tuning in to episode 75. We'll see you next week, and I'll see you later. Have a good night.